History laid the foundation
that informs our conversation. Welcome to the classroom.
from the church to the streets and even in the suites and all around the world.
I'm gonna keep it real in the classroom.
Fannie Lou's classroom. Fannie Lou's classroom. Fannie Lou's classroom.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Super excited to be back here again on another Thursday for another episode of Fannie Lou's Classroom. It's a special episode on today that we are excited about as we will honor the life and the legacy of Fannie Lou Hamer. And so I usually take this moment to shout out the whole team, but guess what? The team are the guests today. And so I do want to shout out Brooks. She's going to be quiet. She can get on the mic if she wants to, though. We got Brooks who's still managing any and all things related to the classroom to make sure we sound good, look good, and everything runs smoothly. And so today, Cheryl didn't have to worry about prepping our guest today. She's had to prep herself. So she's our first guest, Dr. Cheryl Prelow. Cheryl Prelow offers 30 years of extraordinary success in a series of high-level roles at top-tier companies that include Prism Health North Texas, Dallas County Medical Society, Texas Health Resources, Health Midwest Medical Group, Samuel U. Rodgers Community Health Center, Detroit Medical Center, and Trauma Medical Center. Currently, Cheryl is providing strategic and operational consulting services for local nonprofits that address the determinants of health by focusing on social justice and race equity issues. Cheryl's invaluable expertise, thought leadership, and broad business range has powered a history of developing successful process redesigns and improvements that drive productivity, reliability, and client satisfaction. Such traits has consistently enabled Cheryl to achieve an impressive command of skills needed to manage ongoing business planning processes while developing strategies to meet future challenges in healthcare access, the delivery of services, and leveraging organizational and community services. So y'all shout her out and give her a hand every week, but give a special hand today because she has to, she hates being on camera, doesn't like taking pictures, so she's out of her box again today.
Yes, ma'am.
Then we have Ashley, who you haven't seen, but now she's in the space and we can't wait to hear what she has to say. So we have Mrs. Ashley Savage. Ashley is an experienced program manager with a background in public policy, healthcare, education, and organizational operations. She currently manages scientific programming and peer review for a national nonprofit focused on advancing cardiovascular and stroke research, collaborate with volunteer leaders to develop high-impact educational initiatives and process improvements. In addition to her professional work, Ashley serves as an administrative support to the Pastor of Justice and Pastor Discipleship at Friendship West Baptist Church, assisting with ministry coordination, event planning, and community engagement efforts. With more than a decade of experience spanning healthcare, education, and public service, Ashley works reflects a deep commitment to excellence, strategic collaboration, and social impact. So let's welcome Ashley for the first time in a guest seat on Fannie Lou's Classroom. So this past Monday marked the 108th birthday of Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer. Born in Montgomery County, Mississippi, deep down in the Delta, in a very highly racialized, violent environment, highly restrictive environment. She was born to James and Ella Townsend. And so what we want to start off doing today before we jump into this very organic conversation, how we honor her and what her legacy teaches us today, we want to bring her voice in a very reverent way into this space to get us started off. We want Mother Hamer to talk to us that we might be able to have a conversation about her life.
Mr. Chairman, and to the Credentials Committee, my name is Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer, and I live at 626 East Lafayette Street, Roosevelt, Mississippi, Sunflower County, the home of Senator James O. Eastland and Senator Stennis. It was the 31st of August in 1962 that 18 of us traveled 26 miles to to the county courthouse in Indianola to try to register to become first-class citizens. We was met in Indianola by policemen, highway patrolmen, and they only allowed 2 of us in to take the literacy test at the time. After we had taken this test and started back to Roosevelt, we was held up by the city police and the state highway patrolmen and carried back to Indianola, where the bus driver was charged that day with driving a bus the wrong color. After we paid the fine among us, we continued on to Roosevelt, and Reverend Jeff Sonny carried me 4 miles in the rural area where I had worked as a timekeeper and sharecropper for 18 years. I was met there by my children that told me the plantation owner was angry because I had gone down, tried to register. After they told me, my husband came and said the plantation owner was raising Cain because I had tried to register. And before he quit talking, the plantation owner came and said, Fannie Lou, do you know, did Pap tell you what I said? And I said, yes, sir. He said, well, I mean that if you don't go down and withdraw your registration, you will have to leave. Said, then if you go down and withdraw, that you still might have to go because we are not ready for that in Mississippi. And I addressed him and told him that I didn't try to register for you. I tried to register for myself. I had to leave that same night. On the 10th of September, 1962, 16 bullets was fired into the home of Mr. and Mrs. Robert Tucker for me. That same night, 2 girls were shot in Roosevelt, Mississippi. Also, Mr. Joe McDonald's house was shot in. In June the 9th, 1963, I had attended a voter registration workshop, was returning back to Mississippi. 10 of us was traveling by the Continental Trailway bus. When we got to Winona, Mississippi, which is Montgomery County, 4 of the people got off to use the washroom. And 2 of the people to use the restaurant. 2 of the people wanted to use the washroom. The 4 people that had gone in to use the restaurant was ordered out. During this time, I was on the bus. But when I looked through the window and saw they had rushed out, I got off of the bus to see what had happened. And one of the ladies said it was a state highway patrolman and a chief of police ordered us out. I got back on the bus, and one of the persons had used the washroom got back on the bus too. As soon as I was seated on the bus, I saw when they began to get the 5 people in a highway patrolman's car. I stepped off of the bus to see what was happening, and somebody screamed from the car that the fire workers was in and said, get that one there. And when I went to get in the car, when the man told me I was under arrest, he kicked me. I was carried to the county jail and put in the booking room. They left some of the people in the booking room and began to place us in cells. I was placed in a cell with a young woman called Miss Vesta Simpson. After I was placed in the cell, I began to hear sounds of licks and screams. I could hear the sounds of licks and horrible screams. And I could hear somebody say, can you say yes, sir, nigger? Can you say yes, sir? And they would say other horrible names. She would say, yes, I can say yes, sir. So, well, say it. She said, I don't know you well enough. They beat her I don't know how long. And after a while, she began to pray and ask God to have mercy on those people. And it wasn't too long before 3 white men came to my cell. One of these men was a state highway patrolman, and he asked me where I was from. And I told him Roosevelt. He said, we're going to check this. And they left my cell, and it wasn't too long before they came back. He said, you are from Roosevelt, all right, and he used a curse word. And he said, we're going to make you wish you was dead. I was carried out of that cell into another cell where they had 2 Negro prisoners. The state highway patrolman ordered the first Negro to take the blackjack. The first Negro prisoner ordered me, by orders from the state highway patrolman, for me to lay down on a bunk bed on my face. And I laid on my face. The first Negro began to beat. And I was beat by the first Negro until he was exhausted. I was holding my hands behind me at that time on my left side because I suffered from polio when I was 6 years old. After the first Negro had beat until he was exhausted, the state highway patrolman ordered the second Negro to take the blackjack. The second Negro began to beat, and I began to work my feet. And the state highway patrolman ordered the first Negro had beat to sit on my feet, to keep me from working my feet. I began to scream, and one white man got up and began to beat me in my head and tell me to hush. One white man, my dress had worked up high. He walked over and pulled my dress. I pulled my dress down, and he pulled my dress back up. I was in jail when Medgar Evers was murdered. All of this is on account of we want to register to become first-class citizens. And if the Freedom Democratic Party is not seated now, I question America. Is this America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off of the hook because our lives be threatened daily, because we want to live as decent human beings in America? Thank you.
I wanted to start us there just to bring her into this space. And though this was her testimony in front of the Credentials Committee at the National Democratic National Convention, I think if you listen to what she is saying, particularly at the end, I felt like she turned the corner and moved beyond voting rights because of where we are now in our country and what that message can mean for us today. So I just want to get your initial feedback and thoughts on hearing her testimony, what is it saying to you in this moment? Ashley, Cheryl, either one of you can go first.
I'll go first. So I think, just listening to the words, her tell her story, speak her truth, and the vileness, the viciousness, the violence that she endured, the racisms, the slurs, being able to hear someone else in pain being beaten, listening to her story where the police authority had other Black people beat her, and when she began to cry, the officers, would beat her in her head. She even tried to maintain some type of decorum through that entire process to fix herself up and, again, to dehumanize her as a child of God. They chose to go ahead and lift her dress back up. So just listening to the savagery around how she was dehumanized and just seen as a thing versus a life, a person, it's just really... It's really frustrating, sad, and unfortunate to know that is our history. And I think it's important that people understand that is our history. And when I say our history, not only Black history, but the history of America. And people need to know that was 1964.
Right.
So that's just 61 years ago? So that's not a long time ago.
Is people still alive?
Yes.
Who would that happen?
So, just to recognize that that is what she went through, and that to this day, we are still experiencing that type of oppression, savagery, violence, racism in our lives today. So that was kind of like my initial when I heard it. And I think the other thing is listening to just a regular person being able to get to that platform and make that statement. I think that was very profound too, because we all need to know that regardless of where we're at in life, if you think you need to be an X versus a Y to be able to make a difference, she is living proof that you can be who you are and still make a difference. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that was like my initial thought.
No, it's whatever you were feeling. Yeah,
that's what was going through my mind as just listening to her testify.
Everything you said, but to tag on to that, despite what she experienced in that moment, the courage that she had to even sit there and tell her testimony unapologetically with so much courage and so much strength, it's inspiring. And I don't think in that moment she was doing it to inspire others. She was really doing it, to speak to the injustice. And when she asked the question, is this America? I look at that more like a rhetorical question, because it's just like, well, who does that apply to? To you, to y'all, to everyone? And to your point, when they had, people that look like her, forcing themselves on her, beating her, it's just, in a way, it's heartbreaking to even hear that, to see even the images that we see online. We saw them in textbooks growing up, obviously, but, that they thought they had that much power to do that themselves to us, but then to make an example, if that's the way to put it, to like have us do that to one another, it's just it's hard to watch, hard to listen to.
Yeah, and I think, Cheryl, you said she's an example of, what I call an ordinary person with extraordinary talent, right? And I always say, God, nobody's extraordinary. That we're all ordinary. But when we allow God to use us, what we do becomes extraordinary. And I think a lot of that came from somewhere.
That's a snippet.
So, so that came from somewhere, right? That was something that was nurtured and nourished in her. And I think for me, when I hear that, to your point, how powerful she was, the president, Lyndon Baines Johnson at the time, to prevent her testimony from going live for people to hear it, he called a press conference around, I think it was Kennedy's 9th anniversary of his assassination, like something that was totally irrelevant in terms of nothing was going on in the country, right? But it's always what you meant for evil, God intends for good, where it worked out, where she still was able to make the national news, and that testimony then was broadcasted everywhere. And I think, and it's what you always said, I think if I were to sum it up, it would be she had conviction, courage, and commitment. Because it takes a different level of commitment. Because the beating she took in that jail wasn't the first of the injustice that she saw, right? It was an ongoing. She was part of a sharecropping system, right? She was, in deep levels of poverty in the Delta of Mississippi. But something in her, right, made her still step out and to be a strong voice. So let's just kind of start having some conversations around the woman. What about her built this bold, brilliant, and bodacious woman to say these things, right, knowing she could be killed? Right, so now we say a lot of things, and the threat against us is not the same. Like to say something, then you literally could be drug out your house and strung up from a tree. And she was doing all that knowing that was on her. And she risked her life when she was kicked off the plantation because she would remove her name from the voter registers, right? So she had to leave. and leave everything behind. So let's just talk about maybe the first kind of question we want to toss around is what's the significance of this Black woman, right? Not only sharecropping background, but a very racialized, violent background. For her to rise to such prominence in the nation, what drove that?
Courage, truth. I think, her background, I think that's significant to note. She didn't have a formal education. She didn't come from a wealthy background. But somehow she still rose to the national stage. And I think when we talk about like her leadership, well, let me first say, the church girl in me wants to say, it's all God. Because he obviously equipped her with everything that she would need in order to fulfill her destiny.
Right.
Like there's literally nothing, if he has it ordained for us, there's literally nothing that anyone, any circumstance can do to deter that. And then I think her leadership for me is inspiring because of her limitations in growing up, she has strong leadership. So it shows that, it's not just about titles. We're now fortunate to have leadership summits and conferences to get credentials and all of these things that make us a leader. But she didn't have that. But she still had lived experience that literally made her a name that we are still inspired by. A whole podcast, she's the heartbeat of all of this, all of these years later. So I think that's the significance to me of, her impact.
I think I agree with all of that. For me, her significance is yet another demonstration of how Black women, I'm going to focus on Black women, how we draw upon our ancestors the strength to move forward. And recognizing that in doing that, we may be harmed. So when I think about her, it's like she is drawing upon all of our African ancestry, all of the when we were in the motherland, all of the things that happened to African Americans during the slavery period in this country, and Jim Crow and all the things. I just feel like God positioned her to be able to stand on all of those shoulders and move forward and be bold in her vision and in her commanding presence to make sure that people understood that we deserve to live a fully humane life. So that's what I think is most significant about her, pulling back, dropping on our history and our ancestors to push forward.
Yeah, and I know, and to your point, that, and I'm going to end because everything is true, right? Everything you all are saying is so on point. And her parents were very instrumental in, because to your point, she didn't go to school. She learned on the margins, right? But as Karen Crozier would say, she had a well-developed theology. Yeah. And so and for her, it was to be lived. It was a faith to be lived out. Yes. And so one time, she's famous for saying many things. And this one I love, she said, well, I'm going to go out in the streets because that's where it's happening, because that's where God would be. That's where God is. He's in the streets. And so she oftentimes confronted Black preachers and would say, you can see in some of her writings and people who wrote about her life, where she would confront the Black preachers, like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Our people are suffering. Yes. And you're preaching this version of the gospel that only it just seeks to continue to oppress us while it's also enriching white folks at the same time. So she challenged a lot. And I think what it tells us that the best work is done on the margins and those who are pushed to the margins. And that's what she really brought to bear. And so I think when you bring the combination, Cheryl saying, she's drawn on our ancestry. She's drawn on her family who really poured into her. But she also, was never in her mind too old to learn. Because when she joined Freedom Summer, she was middle-aged. So she was around SNCC, around a lot of the young people. But she went into those freedom schools during Freedom Summer and clearly emerged out of that as a national leader, co-founder of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, to say, okay, Mississippi Democratic Party, you're locking us out. We're going to create our own party. And they're demanding to be seated. And that's why they went before the Credentials Committee. So I think for me, everything starts with how she understands God. And it all flows from there. And I think that's when you're listening to that testimony. It is rhetorical. She said, is this America? She knows it's not the land of the free and home of everybody, right? It's almost like King would say, be true to what you put on paper. You don't believe what you put on paper. Like today.
Yes.
That Constitution means nothing, right? And as someone recently said, the Constitution can't pray. The Constitution can't, push power over people. So what people say what they believe, but does it match the praxis?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And I think she is a demonstration of calling people to task on that in plain language. I think that's the beauty, right, of her being kind of marginalized from the dominant society. I'm going to talk to you real plain because everybody can understand it. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I just think she had a beautiful life despite all of the challenges that she faced. And to me, she would be the embodiment of not only moral courage and moral clarity, but what it really means to have joy. Mm-hmm. If someone said, well, Dan, what's joy? Look at Fannie Lou Hamer. For her to endure the physical violence, not to mention the structural violence, and still say, I'm still going to go out here. I'm still going to start this freedom farm so we can feed ourselves. I mean, how she even was able to continue to grow and how she understood what God had called her to do. It's always amazing to me. And I learn something new about her every time I pick up a book, right? And if you go to our Instagram page, I think we still have the books listed there.
Yes.
There's several books listed that can just really give you a really good insight to who she was in more deeper levels. So, okay. So anything else anybody wants to share around that? What you think drove her? What undergirded her voice and what I call her mission and ministry to the world. I mean, she's known throughout the world, not just here in the States. So very powerful. Anything else you want to add? No, go ahead.
The only thing that came to mind as you were talking about her and her personhood and being on the margin, I think that just really resonated with me because I feel as though, we cannot overlook that because, at the end of the day, she was really speaking for how most of us were living at that time.
Correct.
When you push people to the margin, mm-hmm. you're only gonna show what's successful. So she was a wonderful example of saying, no, we are here. Mm-hmm. We deserve to be here, and we deserve to have a full and humane existence in this country, in this world, in this town, wherever you may be at that time. So I think that, again, what we can learn from that is that she was really representing what most of our people were, mm-hmm. our actual reality. And not those few. Right. And I think sometimes in society, we get so fixated on the few that have made it that we continue to neglect mm-hmm. and forget and come back and make sure that the majority still are getting what they need.
Right.
So that I think that's the other mm-hmm. significance about her.
Yeah. Oh, now I want to talk a little bit more about this space on the margins as being a prophetic space. So, because she was certainly marginalized by gender, by race, by class, mm-hmm. and I might even say geographic location, being deep in the Delta of Mississippi, right? And I'll even say ecclesial norms, right? She was a Black church woman, but she was on the margin as related to the predominant Black church in that moment that did not speak truth to power, that really just preached a dualistic theology. So then they preached the gospel, as some would say, with holes in it. So it's always, escapism, mm-hmm. over spiritualizing, don't push back, don't go out there and fight against them white folk. You're going to get killed, right? So I think she represents what can happen when we're on the margins. And it really, to me, said that's where we need to be. And I think that's where we have the most, and even today when we're talking about what needs to be done, we have to go find those places or the people who are suffering the most, as Thurman would say, whose backs are against the wall, that's where I think the prophetic ministry can really take off. Because to your point, some people who are comfortable, they're like, well, they're much more careful what they say, what they're going to do. I don't know if I can do that. But people who have, it's almost like, gosh, I can't remember who said it. It wasn't Booker T. Washington. That's not who said it. That's whose name popped in my mind. Who said the most dangerous person in the world is someone who has nothing to lose, right? So it's how do you go to people who feel like, I can't take more, I'm suffering so much, and how to use those spaces, in my opinion, to then be prophetic. So when you were saying that, I was like, yeah, that we need to really consider what does it mean to work on the margins and see it as a prophetic space to really build movement. And we'll have a lot of that conversation next week's episode. Ashley, you were going to say something.
James Baldwin.
Thank you. Yes, that sounds like a Baldwin, right? Yeah, so I think that's another significant part of what she teaches us today. If we're trying to figure out where do I go, what do I do? Okay, find the margins and find out what we might be able to do there. So I think I think we start with her faith and theology because that undergirds everything she does and how she understood herself and also how she understood the world around her and therefore what needed to be done because she knew she was fully human. She's not trying to convince how she understood that was like, I question y'all. She's putting mirror to their face. And so how I do that in 21st century is I'm not going to tell you I'm human. I'm going to ask you the question, what about you makes you inhumane? What about you that you don't like about yourself that you have to be so inhumane in your actions, in your behavior patterns, right? Yeah. That's essentially what she was saying. Like, y'all ain't no homo free or homo to brave, but is it?
Yes.
So yeah, what else?
Oh,
y'all want to throw another question in the mix?
yes.
Okay.
Because I did have a thought, but I didn't want to interrupt you. But
Okay.
I'm of a certain age and it's gone now.
It's going to come back. It'll come back. Okay, so let's talk about this then. Because this kind of goes to what we're talking about. Let's talk about this because we can talk about how it looks now. So with her famous quote, nobody's free until everybody is free. And how is this message rooted in a theological belief of interconnectedness of people?
I'll go first. Okay, so for me, when she says that, again, we are the body of Christ. We are one. So if one suffers, we all suffer. So if one person is not free, from my standpoint, then that means nobody is truly free. Some people might think they're living a free life, but not really. So for me, I just think back, and this is just based. I'm not a theologian, as the person to my right is, but just based on my upbringing and what I believe, we are all children of God, and we all should be valued. Taken care of, there for one another, care for one another, have the access to the things we need to live fully. And I keep getting back to humanely because I really think we miss out on, we can talk about all the things that aren't happening that should be and that we don't have access to, but to your point, we need to get down to why is it that why do you not see humanity in me? Yeah, because I am. I know that I am. I just need to understand why you cannot see that. So for me, that's what that means to me. That's why I think it's kind of rooted in her belief in God, and that is what connects us. Is because we are all the body of Christ. So
actually, Brooke, Ashley, and you are theologians. Everybody's a theologian because that just simply means what you think about God. Who is God to you?
Oh, I like that. Thank you.
And how do you? And that's our theology. It's God talk, and we all have God talk, right?
Yes.
So
thank you for that.
So
shameless plug.
So that's So we all of that, and I think that's why I love her so much because she didn't go to any university. She didn't sit up in a field. So when I sit in school, in seminary or divinity school, like Fannie Lou Hamer's going to drive how I even understand what they teach me in this institution.
Yes.
right? And so, so just like you have organic public intellectuals, because I think everybody has the capacity. Does everybody have the space and time?
Do they make the space and time?
If you work in 3 and 4, if you're doing the margins, no, you don't. You're trying to survive.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
So it's how, and that's why I think the margins are the prophetic space for us to go into, because the only way I can say it, it's not the language I want to use, but I think that's more the pure space where you can get thoughts out, right? Because they're trying to well, we need this. I want to survive, as opposed to I have the privilege to pontificate. We don't solve it today. That's fine.
Yes.
Right. It's almost that thing I had to tell someone one time. We were talking about hunger. They were like, well, is it a problem in America? Well, it's because you eat every day.
Oh, my.
And so I think that's part of how, when she said, and I think we have to think about it, and just because you had 3 meals today doesn't mean somebody else did. Right? And I think that whole thing of, I'm going to let you answer. I'm sorry, I'm going on to answer the question. Please, Ashley, what do you think she means by nobody's free until everybody is free?
I think Cheryl pretty summed it up. Freedom isn't freedom if it only applies to a few of us. And I think because she was a woman of faith, her rationale was, if one of us hurts, we all hurt, or we should.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's just fundamentally what that means to me too. She's just saying, if we're looking from a theological belief that's interconnected, it's just simple. We're all children of God, and we all should have access to life-giving, life-sustaining resources. And so, in the real sense, if you're the one who is having power over somebody where they don't have access, you're locked up too.
Yes.
Right? Because the more you do that, it's more that you are making yourself disconnected from spirit when you do that. Because that's not of God, right? To have power over and dominate people. And I don't care how they dress it up. They can call it white evangelicalism. They can call it Christian nationalism. It's anti-God when you're looking to destroy, particularly around, racialized violence that she endures. I think that's out of her context, right? Where she is seeing that y'all are not even free. Though you may have the power and you're running things, you're not free either. And I think that goes to, is something about you that's devoid. Something is missing internally with yourself that you don't like. That there's some scarcity within yourself that makes you then treat another human being that way. And I think just considering when she said that in her day and time, her social political context would make her say that, which is still a powerful statement. We still say it today, So yeah, okay. So I think another one, another thing I like when she says, I don't know if it was in the clip we heard, but I know I heard another clip when she says, we didn't come all this way for no 2 seats. And how does that still resonate in conversations about political representation, but also what does that say about how we know what we want and we're not going to settle for less than what's due, right? When she said, we didn't come all this way, right? They came to be seated,
yes,
but they came for more than a seat, right? So let's talk about that.
Am I starting this one?
Yes.
Okay. All righty. So for me, I think we didn't come for just these 2 seats. A couple of things resonate with me. One, I think for me, when I interpret that, she's saying, one, we need to be here, we need to be represented. But beyond just that representation, we need to make sure that whatever policies need to be enacted to make sure that we live whole, that happens as well. Because you can have a seat at the table and still not have any power or influence at the table.
Right.
So to me, she is saying, we are coming. We expect to be at the table. We expect to influence and to make sure and to hold people accountable for what is or is not happening. So that's kind of like the first thing that I think of around that. And as far as representation is concerned, again, even if you're at the table, you're a part of the strategy, the conversation, the decision-making process. Again, I think it's important that we have the critical mass that could be either people who look like us, or we influence others who support and understand that everybody, that we are aligned in our thinking and what people need, that again we are able to affect change. So that's what I hear. It's like we're going to be here, we're going to be able to influence, have power, and that representation again also is about capacity, numbers, and all of that.
And when you spoke about representation, and not just token representation.
Correct.
For the sake of DEI, for the optics of we just have people at the table to be able to have influence, to have, a say, to be a part of the strategy conversations, to actually make impact. Because you can be in the room, like you said, and you're just there for optics.
Right.
We have a lot of that right now.
We have too much of that right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think some of it is it's also this notion around we didn't just come for seats. And I think you were alluding to this because I think she saw it much broader than just the Mississippi Democratic Party and the convention. I think she's looking at what she knows that needs to be done to bring about full. Now she didn't use this language, but I would say how she understood it, full equity.
Yes.
So it's not just the seats, but it's what they symbolize, what kind of power can come from those seats, and what needs to happen structure. Like she understood the social structures because, she was a sharecropper, and she knew that system was diabolical, right? It was diabolical. It was inherently economic exploitive.
Yes.
From its inception, right? And so I think she understood life in a particular kind of way, but I think she saw the party as a way to begin to bring about the kind of justice she knew that was due to, particularly in that moment in time, Black people. Right. I think she understood there was a larger ecosystem that was at work, but this was a way to engage and enter into the space. Is to be able to have the ability to set the policy, to set the law, to be seated, to have, but to your point, but can we make decisions? You didn't want to be like, when you had the first Black police officer back in the day, he couldn't arrest white people, couldn't carry the gun.
Yes.
So
what was I doing? Risking my life.
Right. So, it's to y'all's point, right? She didn't mean that. We're not sitting here just, don't give us a seat, just say we did it. Like, we're here looking for power. And she was clear about that in my estimation. She was clear about we're coming here for power because it belongs to us and we're going to take it. And I think that came from that summer, that Freedom Summer, that was very powerful and impactful, working with Mother Septima Clark, Ella Baker. Just how she was poured into, and I think that just gave her that extra kind of push, which, but that's the way Ella Baker worked, right? She was around everybody around the table as a leader. We all have the ability. And I think we can pick up that model today because we tend to have these intergenerational battles. And I think we would do well to see that it takes all of us. It's transgenerational, that we all have a part to play in this. Now we all need to know where we sit at the table and be okay with that because that's what it takes. Whatever seat you're in, it's needed. And I think Fannie Lou Hamer's an example of that. Ella Baker, Mother Septima, and then all the young people who were there. So clearly all worked together. Why? Because it was a common goal. And of course, back then, to your point, you had very few Black folks who weren't struggling. So we all here. Or as you know, if you could have been a sharecropper, somebody living next door to the doctor or the lawyer because you all had to live together.
Yes.
So it's much more obvious, I guess, I would say. But hey, I'm not even gonna say it's a comeback because all this been here the whole time, and we're seeing it now more than ever. And I'm like, they really are trying to take you. People keep saying the 60s. No, I'm saying they're trying to take you back to the antebellum period.
Yes.
Not the 50s or the 60s.
No. Yeah.
Right. And I think this is what this Sankofa, and really what we're doing, this Sankofa moment, to look back and to see the social political context, what she did in that moment, and how that is looking very similar to today. Yes. And do we have Fannie Lou Hamers who are going to be willing to have, the conviction, one, then the courage, and then the commitment to really push this forward? And if we're going to preserve this would-be really fragile democracy, right? It really is still a new experiment, though, when you think about, the rest of the world. This country is still new. Yes. When you look at the rest of the world. And a racial democracy, to your point, was just 61 years ago. Yes. So it's fairly new. People are still alive that were from back then. Yes. So it's not that long ago. So that's what, for me, when she kind of moves and says that uses that language and understanding the time, I think it's all those things, but it's powerful. I think it's something we can look to, especially in our current political climate. We're talking about what do we do with our current representation? They may look like us, have a seat at the table, but we're like, where's the results?
Yes.
Especially when you sat there for decades.
Yes.
And nobody is questioning results. And we have to start doing that, right? So, okay. Go ahead.
So just as you were talking about our past mothers and the examples that they still are today, it just made me think about, and that this is a transgenerational movement. It should be, as all movements should be. One of the things that just kind of came to me was my concern about our younger folks, and even people even our age that don't know maybe or remember as much, because I can honestly say I did learn all of these things when I went to school. I'm not sure what happened for the folks after X, but again, how do we make sure, what can we do in our spaces, formal or informal, to make sure that we are imparting that wisdom and encouraging our younger generations to go out and equip themselves with the real information, so they understand where we've come from and who's our heroes and sheroes are, and the things that we can do to get them ignited, to make sure that they would want to be more involved in this whole thing that we call civic engagement, the political system, whatever it is. So that was one thing. And then the other thing that I think I thought about a long time ago, and it just now came back to me, was I think the brilliance around her. We talked about her and her limited education. She was a typical regular person of the time, but the broad, I think, structures that she was talking about, I think frightened people, that she was able to do that in a very simplistic way. She talked about economics. She discussed public health. She didn't use those words necessarily, but she always talked about that, and she was able to clearly tell a story in her own words around all of the injustices and this how this is really systemic and why it needs to change. And we are not who we say we are. When I say we, I'm saying the we, America, we, not the us, we. So again, I just wanted to say that, because I think that's another very important thing. It's like, how do we make sure that we're equipping the younger generations to be motivated and to rise to the level of wanting to be involved, in a very direct way, holding an office or in organizing, just making sure that people are informed. There are lots of things that we all can do, but so when I think about her, that is really like just her brilliance around all of that, and being able to do that with just a sixth grade education, which is not bad. I mean, because most people can't even read at a sixth grade. So if you think about it, she was still very well
for that time.
Yeah, for that time, very well, and kind of educated for our community. So I think that's all I wanted to say.
And much of this nation is still illiterate.
Yes.
And read at that grade level.
Yes.
So people who look at her like, well, you look at yourself.
Yes.
In 2025 and where we are. When you think about how literacy and freedom during enslavement was at the top of the enslaved's mind, that to be literate and for them, salvation and literacy were one and the same, right? It was something to be able to read and write. And I think about the quest for that, post-emancipation, the black schools that sprung up. I mean, just this thirst and hunger to read, to write, to learn, to now we're looking at numbers when they say our high school students are graduating, they can't read and write, which is, for me, is an affront to all those who labored and risked their lives just to read and write, and how we're graduating our students and they're not able to read and write. But to your other point, I think we're going to have to learn to turn the TV off, No, get rid of the games, put the phones down, because we're so distracted now. So we're not going to sit down, because you can't, nobody wants to sit for a period of time to listen and to be in the classroom. Right? You have, oh, come out and learn about this. Well, can y'all put it on? You know, we got to do it in ways where you give it to them in snippets, not all of it. So we're just in a challenging time with attention span and just being distracted and having a lot of things we have to juggle. But in my opinion, if we're going to get up out of this, more of us going to have to sit down and really take the time to read, to think, to, you know, really talk about what we might do next. But I'm excited because next week we'll jump into a little bit of that on how we might do that. But that's going to be important. I think that Fannie Lou Hamer is a good way to segue into next week around just the powerful way. She leaves a powerful legacy. And the more you dig, the more you learn about her. Yeah. You know, how she was just like, give us the land, we'll feed ourselves.
Thank you.
You know, she understood land and labor in a particular way because she had to work the land and not get any. Her labor didn't produce anything. It produced it for the white man. Right, so she understood that. So knowing what she didn't want, she knew what she wanted. She knew what was really God given, God designed, and it wasn't sharecropping. Yes. And so, just an amazing woman. I won't get into all the ways in which she lost her body autonomy. Like many Black women, their bodies were not their own, and just how she, you know, understood that. She said, "I'm gonna go ask that doctor why you do that. Yes. You didn't tell me." You know, it's just, I don't know, she's just an incredible woman. I'm always reading about her, and just everywhere I go, I'm like, I find ways to think about her. And of course, the podcast was birthed because of that. Because to me, she lived at the intersection of theology, race, gender, and politics. And this is what we try to do here in the classroom to keep that legacy alive. Ashley, do you have anything else you want to add? I know we're getting close to time.
I don't think so. I do want to say, though, growing up, I grew up in Virginia, and in grammar school, I honestly cannot remember learning about Fannie Lou Hamer. Like, we learned about Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Ida B. Wells, you know, Rosa Parks. Those were the names, like, in the textbooks that we learned about. I honestly can't remember. And I could be wrong, and I asked one of my friends. She couldn't remember either, but I can remember hearing Fannie Lou Hamer's name. I went to an HBCU for undergrad and graduate school. Shout out to Norfolk State University.
Come on now.
And I remember hearing it then, but over time, social media, that was probably where I first heard her voice, saw images of her, and then doing the work here at Friendship West, and Pastor Ayers' inspiration and fondness for Fannie Lou Hamer, like literally, I learned something new about her every single week. And it's so inspiring because you just hear so many stories. And I think, honestly, learning about her at this stage of my life, even some of the stories that I would have potentially learned growing up in school, they wouldn't have resonated the same. Like learning about her forced hysterectomy, different things like that. It wouldn't have hit the same. So I just really appreciate even the opportunity to sit in the classroom week after week just to learn about her, and then how her experiences from many years ago, how unfortunately they're still relevant in 2025, but how it still inspires us in ways to try to push forward.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, and I think that's the richness of her life that we'll just keep learning. I think we're going to keep learning. Or, you know, how it's just like scripture. When you read it, when you're from 5 years ago, you may have got one interpretation and understanding. But life's, and then you read again, you're like, ooh, I got some fresh water from this old well. And I think the same with her, the more you read, like, you know what, she did what? So actually it's almost how Cheryl is saying, you know, she talked about public health. Like, we have different language now.
Yeah.
But this is not, so it also helps us and hopefully prevents us from saying things like the first. Yes. I discovered. Well, no, actually you didn't. You just haven't, you're naming it now. It's almost like it's also how the womanist theology, right? The 4 tenets of womanist theology. People, when I think about it, I'm like, okay, so we have language now, but I can look at Black women back there. This is what they were doing. Right? So it's kind of like language comes later in life, and it's important for us to make sure we don't do a disservice to those who came before us. And we say, you know what? It's not new. We have language, we're expanding and we're growing it, right? And that's really the African understanding of education and knowledge transfer and knowledge gathering. Is not, I got to find something new nobody has done. No, it's been done, but how are we understanding it in a new way? What's the freshness? What has breathed life? What the spirit has spirit breathed life into it in a different kind of way, as opposed to a European Western way of you got to come up with something brand new, unique, and what we always find they done dug it up from somebody else and stole it from somebody else, right? And so, yes, I'll stop there because I'm going to go down another road about. But that's the beauty in us learning about people, because then we're like, oh, she was talking about public health. She's talking about food sovereignty, land sovereignty.
Yes.
You know, we just have a language for it. You know, my good friend Heber Brown, that's my friend. That's yes. You know, when I tell the story all the time, he was on the show. I met him in the lobby in Ghana in 2013, and he was talking about, I'm gonna do some stuff around food sovereignty and land sovereignty. I'm like, that sounds good. And to see what he's doing now, I'm like, Heber, man. He's like, I know, DA. He's like, I can't believe I'm doing this. But he was talking about Fannie Lou Hamer then. Right? And even my good friend Karen Crozier, who was on the show a few seasons ago, she wrote the book, Fannie Lou Hamer's Revolutionary Practical Theology, a book. And she like entered into it talking about the food. So it's interesting, like people are doing all kind of work around one part of this woman's life and her mission and ministry. So much more to explore, to talk about. I talk about her from the public health standpoint in my dissertation. You know, I leaned into her experience with that. So I'm like, man, she just keeps on giving. Right, because she stepped up and did what she knew God was calling her to do, and despite not having formal education, she was highly educated.
Absolutely.
And so we thank Fannie Lou Hamer for her life, and I'm just grateful that we're continuing to be able to call her name, speak her name, and continue to lift her legacy up and to really grow and expand it and build on it. Thank her for what she did, that we can think about it in new ways and how we might move forward. So, well, thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Ashley, for being in the classroom. Thank you, too, Brooke. You could have jumped on the mic, but you decided to stay behind the scenes today. So thank you for tuning in on today. Just some quick things I want to cover. So you may have noticed we have some new merchandise that drops. So some of you have purchased our original Fannie Lou Classroom T-shirt that helps us keep the podcast going, and that's the gray T-shirt with the flowers. But you can see we now have it in black with flowers, or you can see Cheryl's version. It's just a black and white with no flowers. And guess what? You can also get a bag to match whatever T-shirt you purchase. The bag can match your T-shirt, so you can get a black with flowers, or gray with flowers, or black without, or black with. So you got a few options. So you can scan that QR code. It'll take you to a link to order that T-shirt. Or you can go on friendshipwest.org, go to the Justice page, and you will see a link for Fannie Lou's Classroom where you can purchase your shirt. Again, it just helps us keep the podcast going, to be able to accommodate the amazing guests that we bring on the show. So please, please, please support by purchasing a T-shirt today for you, your friend, your boo, whoever. You can buy more than one. We got inventory.
Yes.
So we would appreciate your support. So next week's episode is going to be an amazing episode next week. You don't want to miss it. We have two amazing guests. My dear brother out of Memphis, the Reverend Dr. Earl Fisher, PhD, and my good sister out of New Jersey, Charlene Walker, will be here. And we're going to talk about moving the masses to build sustainable movement. So we're going to really pick up from this conversation with Fannie Lou Hamer and shift that into, okay, what does that look like today in light of what's happening in our world in real time, because this is not a drill, and I think we need to be clear about that. This is what we're seeing is not a drill, and we have to be able to resist that and to push back. And of course, I'm gonna keep shouting out and highlighting our Eye Care Drive initiative. You know, our Eye Care is year round. We support our schools, and particularly the Haynes Global Preparatory Academy, the young scholars on the campus of Paul Quinn College. And so we're in the midst of our holiday drive right now, where we're going to, the students is giving us some good wish lists. You know, these kids are, when you tell them to give a wish list, they do just that. But we're going to try to accommodate what they would like to have for the holiday. And it takes all of us as a community to do that, to kind of rally together to make sure the holiday is amazing for our young scholars. So you can scan the QR code, make a contribution. If you want to give contributions, we can use that money to purchase the items. Or you can stop, if you're local and you're here at Friendship West on site on Sundays, you can stop by our table in the narthex and pick up a nice little card that will have a student on there that lists the items that they may need. So we're excited about Eye Care. Can't wait to surprise the students again this year. They had a wonderful time last year.
Yes.
And lastly, it's early voting starts August, Lord. It starts October 20th. So we got another week. Make sure you go out and vote. Make sure if you have local elections where you are, do that. And just because it's 17 amendments doesn't mean you shouldn't go vote. So we're going to have our website up this next week. Our website will be up. We'll have any and all things voter related. And this Sunday, we'll be passing out our voting guide so you can be clear about what those 17 amendments mean. If you say yes or no, because some of those you might want to take a look at because they can impact your household directly. So make sure, hey, go out and vote. Usually in these elections, we don't show up, but this is how we end up in some of the places that we're in because we just think it's not that important. Then it passes, then it hits you, and then we're trying to figure out how do we then respond. So we're trying to be proactive by making sure we use our right to vote and to vote for the amendments in a way that's going to benefit not only your household, but the entire community. So thank you for being here on this Thursday. We look forward to seeing you next week right here in the classroom.
From the church house.